The following is a program of the Santa Barbara County Education Office. To learn more, visit sbceo.org.
Hi, I'm Susan Salcido, Santa Barbara County Superintendent of Schools, and am so delighted to introduce to you our guest for today, Fredriks, science teacher at Orcutt Academy High School and faculty advisor for the Spartatronics, the robotics team we'll talk all about today. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Susan. It's great to be here.
And where we want to start is really about your background. And I know in talking with you, that has really inspired you and helped you as a teacher in many ways of the way in which you grew up. So please share with our audience a little bit about your childhood, where you grew up, and some of your background.
Will do. It's an honor. Well, again, thank you for letting me be here with you today. I didn't really consider that as as influential as it seems to be now, but I grew up the son of Dutch immigrants, and they came from Holland in 1960, and I was born 3 years later, and we were in the San Fernando Valley for a while, but a couple of the things that, you know, your parents always tell you the same stories over and over again, but you actually start analyzing how those stories have an impact in your life. And my folks told us about the hard times in World War II and how they barely knew if they would actually make it to the next day. And I think those kind of stories shape the person that we become today. So, you know, some people say that I put in a lot of time or I've got a good work ethic, and I think I have to thank both of my parents for that.
That's great. Wonderful. And where did you go to college?
So, I went to Cal Poly. Go Mustangs!
Go Mustangs!
My dad said, you know, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Dad said, well, Ty, people always have to eat, so get into the whole food production thing. Now, don't be a farmer because you're not that good with your hands, and don't worry about trying to sell it. Be that middleman. And so I studied ag business management. I found out that ag really wasn't for me at Cal Poly, but so I took more business classes, and I ended up starting a 2-decade career in retail management.
In retail management, from ag to retail management, and somehow we found you in teaching. So trace for us that path from ag to business to teaching.
So going back a little further, I grew up in the San Fernando Valley, and I'm getting ready for our talk today. I was kind of analyzing how I ended up where I am now, and there was this thing in the LA County schools in 79 to 82. And it was a mandatory busing program, school integration. And my dad, because he was a stubborn Dutchman, he said, my son is not going to spend 60 minutes on a school bus going to school and another 60 minutes coming back. We were actually part of that 3-year white flight out of the LA County schools. We ended up in a town called Porterville, which is in between Fresno and Bakersfield, San Joaquin Valley, ag intensive. And I think that's where my dad kind of was thinking about that too. So after Cal Poly, I had multiple job offers in retail. I chose Long's Drugs. I was in management. I actually became a store manager.
And where was that?
Up and down the Central Coast, from San Luis all the way down to Buellton. I helped manage all those different stores. And we ended up getting bought out. And the job that I was enjoying became a job that I didn't enjoy at all. And many of my colleagues just stuck it out and, you know, stayed with it. And my dad, my mom, they taught me, if you don't like where you're at, do something to change it. So I did. And my wife had been teaching ever since we met in college, and she graduated. She started teaching right away. And I saw how hard she worked and how I was always making more money than she was. And I didn't consider it at first, but my wife and I have 2 daughters, and I was their soccer coach. And the parents would say, Ty, you should get into teaching. You're so good with the kids. And I went, yeah, right. Like I would ever be a teacher.
Yeah.
And, when things changed, I started taking classes after school, and I got my credential.
That's great.
And my parents would say, Ty, you should have gotten to teaching right away. And to be honest, I don't think I would be the teacher I am today if I hadn't taken the path that I did.
Lots of lessons learned along the
So
way.
true,
Yeah,
yes.
so true. One of the things that emerged for me, and we can talk at some point, is that takeover from a different company that impacted the company you were working for. And so what that means for how leadership and management really does influence a company and an organization. It's just really interesting to me that happened to you, that really helped you go into a different direction. It really highlighted something that other people were saying they noticed in you, which is that you were so good with students and kids. So lucky for us in the education profession that's where you turned. So now you're working with many components of Orcutt Academy High School, but one of the areas is with Spartatronics. And so tell us a little bit about this, because it is not a club. It is not just an activity. It's an actual varsity sport. It's a huge team. Say what you would like to say about the Spartatronics program.
So we compete in a program called FIRST, for Inspiration and Recognition of Science and Technology. And it is a worldwide program. And these kids work incredibly hard. They put in a lot of time. We just finished up with build season, and our students were working almost 30 hours a week, every week on top of their school, 6 days a week. They learn the power of putting your nose to the grindstone, sticking with the problem until you solve it, and figuring it out. It was really funny. I got to tell you the story of how we first started. I was the soccer coach for the first 2 years. We didn't have robotics yet. And a gentleman had, an engineer on base, had his son in one of my freshmen in my conceptual physics class.
Okay.
And he sent me a letter that said, I'd like to start an engineering club. Only 1 or 2 hours a month. We laugh about that till this day. That it turned out to be way more than 1 or 2 hours a month.
Yeah.
But the program, the thing that I love about it, Susan, is that it isn't just for the kids that are tech savvy, or the nerds or the geeks. It is, we have a variety of sub-teams that students can specialize in. I will tell anybody who wants to listen that this is the closest that a high school student can get to running a small business. You have all of the parts that deal with the robot, the CAD, software, electrical, pneumatics, the mechanical, but you also have all of the sub-teams that support the business parts of the team. You've got the business, which is fundraising, and outreach, which we did principal for a day, and that's how we met.
That's right.
And that was organized by our outreach team. And then we even have a director of human relations.
Wow.
It's really fun. There are so many different things that we can offer kids that want to put in the effort.
So you said a lot of things about this team. Is it best to call it a team or program?
We like to consider ourselves a team.
Team, okay.
Because
right.
everyone relies on one another.
Okay, so Spartatronics, the team, you talked about multiple components of it. So one of the pieces you talked about was how it started. Started out with an idea, how about an hour a month? And now we know it's much more than that. It also talks about your students and the participants on the team. How many students are part of Spartatronics today?
Well, our very first year in 2011, we had 24 students. We didn't even have our own place to build. We had to go into an unused classroom at Patterson Elementary School just to build. We only had 3 girls, and I knew that had to change. And so the second year, we were able to get a room on our campus, but it had a raised floor, so we couldn't put any kind of big machinery in there because it wouldn't support it.
Right.
We have been running about between 35 and 45 students for the last 6 years. And then, I wish I didn't have to say this, but it usually starts out higher, and then some of the students that didn't quite understand what they were getting into weed themselves out. But right now we're at 32 students. 32
students, and you said when you began you had 2 or 3 girls.
Yep.
And now?
We are almost at 50-50.
All right.
We are, and I love having that. Actually, our robot captain, the person who's in charge of all of the decisions in the build room, is Allison Fensky.
Wow, wonderful.
Yep, it's
good.
really cool.
A nice shout out to her.
Yes, without a doubt.
Very good.
She deserves it too.
Good.
That's one hard-working young lady.
And a moment ago, you talked about, I think, a season that just ended. Did you say build season?
Yes.
Okay, so build season is now done. I'm assuming that's building of the robot.
Yes.
Yes, okay. But there's so much more than the building, you said. There's so many different components of the team, business, et cetera. Do all students participate in all components, or are particular students part of building and particular parts part of the outreach and HR, et cetera? How does that work?
That's a really good question. We try to give students a wide variety of experiences. We want them to not only just do, maybe if they're on the electrical team, just do that, but to experience other things as well. One of the things that our team is known for is our outreach event, our outreach series of events through First Lego League. That First Lego League, or FLL, is a robotics competition for younger students from grades 4 through 8. So we have almost every school in Orcutt schools. We are also getting more and more schools in Santa Maria Bonita, and then our team hosts 2 tournaments every year. There's a practice tournament, which is usually the last weekend in October, and then there is a Los Angeles Regional Championship qualifying tournament, which is the second weekend in November. And the teams compete. In that qualifying tournament, the top 5 teams actually get an opportunity to compete down in Los Angeles against the best of the best.
Best of the best. Very exciting.
But the thing is, our students run those tournaments. All of my referees, all of the people that support the students that are there are my high school kids.
What an experience for a lifetime that they'll carry on forward for forever in any area that they pursue. Really wonderful experience. You also mentioned a few moments ago, FIRST, and that is an acronym, if you'll help explain that, and how does that FIRST relate to your team at Orcutt?
Started out with being the brainchild of Dean Kamen. He is the inventor that created the Segway and a lot of other medical things. He's a very successful inventor. He has his own company. But what he decided is that FIRST has been around for 25 years now, and its purpose is to get kids fired up about STEM. And he went ahead and started that with Dr. Woody Flowers from MIT, and they wanted to create the same level of excitement that some kids think about movie stars and sport and athletes. And they wanted to get students to understand that engineering can be incredibly exciting, very fun, and can be a great career choice. So FIRST now has 4 different programs for all levels from kindergarten all the way up through high school. There's the First Lego League Junior. The one that we do is First Lego League. Then there's First Tech Challenge and First Robotics Competition. That's the high school program that we compete, and we build 120-pound robots like you saw it at the demo for Teacher for a Day.
So thank you for that. And FIRST is for inspiration and recognition of science and technology, right? FIRST.
Well
all right.
done.
So hey, all right. Good. That is really neat. That's really neat. So I see how interwoven the Spartatronics team and FIRST clearly are in all of the activities that they do.
And one of the things that I truly feel like I'm in the right place with this is in business. I felt very strongly that I didn't have to make somebody else fail in order for me to succeed. And First weaves that same concept throughout all of the programs. They actually have two different terms that they use: gracious professionalism and cooperation. And they have kind of trademarked those because they want every team to do everything they can to win the competition, compete with everything you have. But if if a fellow competitor, somebody you're going to be going against in the next round maybe, if their robot breaks, you do everything that you can to help them get back on the field. Wow. And you know, I think that's the way life should kind of be.
Gracious professionalism and
Cooperation. Cooperation and competition together.
That's
cooperation.
That's wonderful. What an experience and learning opportunity for these students. And I'm sure you learn a lot about yourself and the students by being an advisor to this group as well.
So true.
So true. And so the students, when they're part of this, you know, when they exit the program or graduate from high school, I'm sure you see such major changes in many of the students. In fact, you were telling us earlier today that one of your own students has actually come back into your world as a substitute teacher in your class. So
That's true.
They do come back and have learned. But what are some of the big changes or big takeaways that you see in terms of students having first entered into your program and when they leave?
So I think students in junior high school, upper elementary, they've heard the term engineering. They kind of have an idea that it's making stuff, but they don't really understand the interconnectedness of how many different people and organizations that an engineer needs to rely on. And one of our students right now, Bennett, shared that with us in his interview for an award that we nominated him for. And he goes, you know what, I've always known, at least I thought I always knew what engineering was, but now I understand that it is that you aren't working alone, that you are relying on other people, you're trying to do your part along with hoping that they do their part and succeeding in life. And there are students that come into our program that have said, well, I think maybe engineering is something I want, but I'll try this robotics team, see what it's like. Number one, first of all, they're surprised at how much work it is. But number two, they're incredibly motivated by the thrill of having a very, very challenging problem and then finding a solution that can overcome that problem, and which we're going to be doing in another couple of weeks, going down to a regional competition with 60 other teams, other high schools, and seeing how other teams have done that, and then seeing our robot actually doing the job that it was supposed to do. That is very, very powerful.
Very powerful. One of the other things that are powerful that I've heard you describe is that competition, the cooperation and competition. But you talked about, you know, once you're finished with regional, then you go on to state, California, and it's fierce competition. How does that help your students learn? I think there's even a component of international competitions, but how does all of that help your students learn, understand about themselves and even engineering?
We have two regional competitions that we go to most years. Okay. This year we're signed up for Los Angeles and Ventura. And I mean, just one of the crazy things, in the Ventura competition, there will be a team from Switzerland there. Wow. And a couple of years ago, we had 4 teams from China. And the students are actually, I think there's a kind of a connection there worldwide to know that on the first Saturday in January, when the game is released worldwide, and this year there are 3,600 teams doing this worldwide. Wow. And all of those teams are doing pretty much the same thing you're trying to do. Understand the game, begin engineering a challenge, build that, test it, and then go and compete with that. And that's a really, I don't know, you think of the world as such a big place, But this helps you realize that we're all in it together, and we're all fighting the same battle, and we're all trying to do a little bit of good for the world. So.
That's wonderful.
Cool.
It reminds me a lot about what just ended, which are the Olympics, and everybody coming together, but really feeling as part of one, something bigger than themselves. So
one of the things I'll never forget is as part of my time with First, I was able to go to the World Festival for First Lego League in St. Louis, Missouri 2 years ago. And I was walking the pits, and there were teams from all over, and I got to witness firsthand the team from Israel and the team from Pakistan, and they were just sharing trinkets together, and it just gives you some hope that, you know what, maybe we can get through all of this together eventually. So.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Ty. Yeah. Well, let's switch over to something that I think is a real critical component of the success of Spartatronics. I see it on your shirt today. You've got logos of different partners. I'm sure those are some. Yeah, some. But partnerships are so powerful. I know you believe that to your core, but also it's so helpful and needed for Spartatronics. So can you talk about perhaps some of the partnerships that you do have, but also the power of those partnerships for you, your program?
The same person who sent me that letter that it was only going to be 2 hours a month, when we finally decided to start a First Robotics team, Scott McLean, who started that with me, had been part of the team in Arroyo Grande, and he was taking his son up there 5 days a week. When we started our own team, and Scott said, Ty, can you meet me over at Melford Borzall? We want to meet with Eric Melsheimer, the VP of engineering there. And I had no idea what we were doing. I still had no idea what First was really about. And we sat in his office, and Scott had talked to him once before. So, there was it was a casual conversation. We were there 7-8 minutes. And we were getting ready to leave, and Eric says, I'm really looking forward to sponsoring $2,500 for your team. Wow. And I wasn't ready for that. Mm-hmm. And we walked out, and I go, what just happened, Scott? And he says, this is a shrewd businessman. He understands that this team will be supplying his future workforce. Mm-hmm. And that shook me to my core. Our annual budget, if we don't go to World Championships, is $40,000 a year.
Wow.
That, in and of itself, is kind of a hard number to fathom. That there is so much support in the community, in the business world, that they realize an organization like this is helping kids learn how to problem solve, learn the hard skills of engineering and the soft skills of how to get along with others, how to work in a team, how to overcome odds. And in businesses such as Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, Melford Borzall, Zodiac Aerospace, all of these companies, and even like Rick's Car Care and Orcutt, every single year it gives us a few $100s, and we so appreciate that. We even got a donation from the Santa Barbara County Office of Ed. So, there's so many people who realize that this team is having an impact not only on the kids that are taking part, but also to humanity.
Right.
The kids that we're interacting with today are going to be the problem solvers of tomorrow.
Absolutely. We're investing in the future.
Yes.
Right. We're investing in the future. So $40,000 is the budget. You said the expenditures, and that's what you need to fundraise each year. And students help with that too, it sounds like.
Yes, they do.
That's wonderful. Well, I'm glad to hear that it's such a robust program, and that it sounds like there's a lot of success in those partnerships for Spartatronics.
Well, the kids have to work really hard at this too. On April 14th, we're going to be having our annual Tri-Tip Chili Robo Show and Silent Auction. And our chairman's captain is really good at saying the whole thing together, but I still don't have that.
So we should all come, right?
Oh, that would be so nice, yes. But that, if we go to Champs, our budget balloons to almost $100,000 a year.
Oh, wow.
And you know, that's a lot of money for kids to raise, for the parents to help with.
Yes.
But somehow we always do it. It's
Somehow you
really
always do
cool.
it. Yeah, well, good. So, Ty, as you speak about your students, and you speak about the passion behind all of what motivates you to be a teacher, and you just instill so much inspiration in your students, and it's really exciting to hear. So impactful. What would you say are some of the best parts of being a teacher?
They keep me young. My students, they always challenge me and make sure that I'm bringing my A game. I teach predominantly freshmen in science, and I like to say that they do that because I'm pretty much the same maturity level as my freshmen. So you know, we get each other. One of the cool things, going way back to the start of our conversation, is with my 20 years of business experience, I tell them that I am the guy that hired them.
Right.
You know, I was hiring the cashiers and the stock clerks, and I know what kind of a person they need to be in order to be successful in the business world. And I tell them that in my geology class, the most important thing they're going to learn from me is not geology. It's life, and how to push yourself to be more than you were originally going to be. And so I love seeing that transition. I don't know how this is going to sound, Susan, but when I first started thinking about teaching, I didn't really understand and grasp that my students are not numbers, and they're not test scores, and they're not anything that you can just put your finger on. They're humans, and I have students that right now are going through more than I've ever had to go through in my 50 years. And yet they're in class every day giving it the best that they can. And to be able to make that connection as one human being to another, not, you know, like an underling to a superior, but just two human beings understanding that I respect you, you respect me, we're going to have a great year together. That is just, I live for that. It is such a great opportunity to be able to interact with 120 young dreamers every day. And some, you know, have stronger dreams than others. I'd say one of my biggest frustrations is not being able to get every kid to go, yes, I can be more. You know, some of them still are going, we'll see. But I'm working on that.
Ty, this has been such a privilege and honor to sit down with you for this fastest 30 minutes that I can think of. As County Superintendent of Schools, I just want to say how truly privileged again and honored we are to have a teacher like you working with our futures, with our students. Listening to you is inspiring, and I love to hear how the influence of your parents, having immigrated here, your experience in school yourself, your experience as a business person, your experiences as a teacher. You're continuing to grow and learn, but you're also instilling that with your students. They're so lucky to have you. We're so lucky to have you, and I just want to say thank you.
Well, thank you so much. This has been a very fast 30 minutes for me as well. So thank you for inviting me and letting me just share with you.
I'm Susan Salcido, Santa Barbara County Superintendent of Schools. Thank you so much for joining us today for this edition of Talking with Teachers.